Morning consult polling, January, Trump was up by 5 in their January poll, 45-40. So Trump plus 5. Mid-March, it was tied. Biden 43, Trump 43. And then a few days ago, their March 31st poll, Biden up 44-42. So you went in a month and a half from Trump up 5 to even to Biden up 2. And that follows kind of the general pattern of the national polling, which is what I called it last week, a lunge toward Biden. It is not a surge, okay, by any means. It's not like Biden gave the State of the Union and all of a sudden he went up 10 points. That is not what happened. What happened is a very gradual movement toward him. And in fact, on Real Clear Politics, the last 5 national polls they have, okay, Biden plus 3, Quinnipiac, the morning consult poll I mentioned where he's up 2, NPR where he's up 2, Forbes, Harris where it's tied, and then the outlier there is Fox News, which had Trump up 5. So of the last 5 polls, the most recent 5, 1 is tied, Biden is ahead in 3, Trump is ahead in 1. So that kind of shows you, I think, where we are nationally. But of course, as we know, this isn't a national election. It's decided by states, and in particular, the 6 or 7 states that will determine who the next president is.
Okay, so if you go back to 2020, I'm trying to find this exactly, which we should be able to. Is it Biden plus 4.5% for the popular vote? Is that what I'm or
Yes, that was the
4.4?
final. Yep. That was
Okay.
the final popular vote total.
So 4.4, 4.5. And to me, when I look at the polling, we'll start with morning consult, which you brought up, and I put it up there. Okay, so January, Trump up 5, middle of March, it's even. March 31st, we're seeing Biden plus 2. And I always find it kind of interesting when I put these videos out there, seeing the reactions to the polling and, oh, you can't believe any polling and it's fake and it's rigged and blah blah blah. And for the people, if you're a Trump voter or you're a Republican, I mean, isn't it pretty fair to say, Eric, that let's say this March 31st poll is accurate from a popular vote standpoint. So that means that Biden went from plus 4.5 in the 2020 election. Let's just say in the 2024 election, he drops 2.5 points. Let's say he wins the popular vote, according to this poll, 44-42. I think for the Trump people that comment on our videos and say this is all crazy, Trump could I don't want to say easily, but Trump could still win the electoral college by losing the popular vote, obviously, by 2 points. So I see this and I look at it and say this is totally believable that, hey, maybe his popular vote gets cut in half, Joe Biden, but he still loses the electoral college to Trump.
Yeah, not only could it happen, I think that's probably what would happen. I mean, I think if let's just say Biden is ahead by 2 points, we had the election tomorrow. I think if Biden won the popular vote by 2 points, he would lose the election. And that gets into the second part. I started with the broad popular vote view, which I think Biden has a better than 50% chance to win the popular vote. But that's just winning it isn't going to be enough, most likely, because there is a slant toward Republicans and Trump specifically in the electoral college. You saw it right in 2016 where he lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton, but he won the electoral college. And if it's very close, if Biden wins by 1, 2, maybe even 3.5 points, Trump has a very good chance in that scenario to win the electoral college. And that gets into the state polling, which is much better for Trump than the national polling has been in recent weeks. Not that Trump's doing badly nationally. He's doing okay, but he's doing better in the state polling. And that's consistent. Those things are consistent, right? Because it is consistent that Biden might be up by a point or 2 nationally or we're even. But Trump is winning in those swing states. That would make sense. And that's what you would assume would happen. If it's even nationally or Biden's ahead just slightly, Trump's probably going to win the presidency because he's probably going to win narrowly most of the swing states. And that's what the Wall Street Journal polling of 7 swing states that came out the other day showed. Trump was ahead in 6 of the 7. Wisconsin was the only exception. And that was true whether it was head-to-head, Trump versus Biden, or whether you included the other candidates, RFK Jr., Jill Stein, Cornel West, and you went 5-way. Trump was leading in 6 of those 7 states. And if Trump wins 6 of those 7 states, he's going to be the president. Biden has to win some of those states. And the ones that he needs and you would say is probably most likely to win are Wisconsin, where he is ahead in this Wall Street Journal polling, and then Michigan and Pennsylvania, where he's slightly behind. If he can win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that would get him to 270 electoral votes, assuming he wins everything else he won in 2020, even if he loses Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia.
Yeah. And this gets back to the polling from last week. And I bring this up because, a lot of people, for us, we're trying to grow this podcast and whatnot. A lot of people watched that podcast and then the clip on the polling. And I think the reaction was, well, this is BS. It was about the swing states. But what we talked about last week is essentially the same thing we're talking about this week. It wasn't that Biden was all of a sudden now winning these swing states, especially the blue wall states. And in the particular poll we talked about last week, it was Nevada. It was that he was closing the gap. The polls were tightening. And I don't remember exactly, but it was Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, I believe Nevada. And he had picked up, let's say, 2 to 4 to 6 points in those states to make it much closer to a tie or a toss up in these states, which I still believe that's going to be the case coming up in November. I'm already given Donald Trump, whether it's Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, Georgia. But to me, if Joe Biden is able to hold the blue wall, I think there's a pretty dang good chance he wins the election. And so I still think here we are, how many months out? We're 6, 7 months out. It's going to be a virtual coin toss in those 3 states to me.
Right. If you go back earlier this month, but especially 3, 4 months ago, Trump was up in some polling by 5 or 10 points in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia. Double digits or close to it in some of those. If you believe that Trump is going to win some of those states by 5 to 10 points, then this election's a blowout. I mean, then you believe that Trump's cruising to the winning the election. And if you believe that, look, good for you. I do not believe that. I believe that was always a mirage. I think the polling now is showing that these states are going to be very tight within 5 points. And some of them probably will be what we saw in 2016 and 2020, a point or less. Remember, Biden won Georgia and Arizona by less than a point. He won Wisconsin by 20,000 votes. I mean, these were narrow margins. And if you believe the polling, and again, look, the polling could be wrong, but if you believe the polling as we sit here today, it looks like we're headed toward that kind of election again. And I want to be clear, that's not bad for Trump. When we're recording this podcast on April 3rd, if the election were tomorrow, I think Trump would almost certainly win. I say almost certainly because the polling could be wrong. But if the election were to be held tomorrow, Trump would be the favorite. He might not win the popular vote, but he would win most of these swing states, enough to give him 270 electoral votes, and he would be the president. But the margins are narrow, and that it only takes a slight continuing drift toward Biden, kind of a pattern we've seen over the last 3 weeks. If that happens for the next 3, 4 weeks or the next couple of months, you could certainly see a scenario where Biden holds Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin and wins the presidency, even if he doesn't hold Arizona and Nevada and Georgia.